It's come to that time. We have 3 speakers that were signed up for today, one who won't be here until later, and one whose car broke down and on his way. So we're going to work around that. So Rick, take it away.
Yep. Well, in the honor of Dave Brubeck and the art of improvisation, we're improvising today's forum. So Jeff Janeczko is just going to take a few more bars in a solo than he planned, which is good. So how my interest in this is from the work that I did. I was a sales manager for a record label called Delos Records.
Oh, sure.
And we worked with a lot of great artists. One of the very nicest people that I met and a great musician is a gentleman named George Schwartz. Virtuoso, virtuoso trumpeter, conductor, and work a lot with American music. And as the label started distribution through Naxos, they also worked with this really nice, subsidiary of Naxos, or called the Milken Archive of American Jewish Music. And what they've done is put out a lot of music from the Jewish diaspora that came from that area of the world, and also American composers that worked in that vein. People like Leonard Bernstein, a great composer named David Diamond, some film composers like Miklos Sorosha. They've been digging into this wellspring of beautiful music, and one of the great pieces that they put out is, if you can see this one, that's Dave Brubeck's Gates of Justice, which is a classical piece that he wrote for choir, jazz trio, and I guess a chamber ensemble. And it's a beautiful piece. What's nice about the Milken Archive in UCLA is that they're actually going to different places to have these pieces performed. And one of them, this coming Tuesday, is going to be at Holman United Methodist Church. So this will be a 2-part presentation. Reverend Ken Walden will be joining us in a little bit to talk about this project and other projects at Holman, which ICUJP has a really nice connection to. But to start off, we have Jeff Janeczko here. He's the curator and chief operating officer at the Milken Archive and a visiting researcher with the center at Milken Center for Music of American Jewish Experience at UCLA. And he also holds a PhD in what I wanted to get, ethnomusicology, but I never learned how to play it well enough and read well enough to get it. And he also teaches courses in Jewish music and ethnomusicology. So, Jeff, good to have you here.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I should say that one of the reasons I went into ethnomusicology is because I can't play very well or read very well either. So don't let that stop you from achieving your dreams. I noticed there's someone in the waiting room, and I know you made me a co-host, but I can't quite tell who it is, and didn't know if you wanted me to let someone in or not. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. I guess in the spirit of reflections, I'll just say it's more than unfortunate, and what I'm kind of thinking about today is the fact that we've been working very hard with our friends over at UCLA to put together this series of concerts and events centered around the idea of music and justice, and bringing people from all different kinds of communities together around the idea of justice. And just yesterday, I learned that various white supremacist groups around the country are planning National Day of Hate, and just a day before those events are scheduled to begin. So I guess it's made me. I've been reflecting a lot as we've been thinking about these events and just thinking about the state of the world in 1969 when Dave Brubeck wrote this piece, and just being a little dismayed at how often I feel like the pendulum has swung back in a very negative direction. So where would you like me to start, Rick? Do you want me to talk about the Gates of Justice a little bit?
Sure. I think also too, if you wanted to talk about the archive as well, and the work that you guys are doing, and the bigger project,
Sure.
Music and Justice too, that's fine.
Yeah. So the Milken Archive was founded over 30 years ago. It was founded in 1990. It's a project within, or an initiative within, the Milken Family Foundation, which does philanthropic work largely in the realms of medical research and education. And this is kind of our arts and culture preservation project. It was founded because one of the founders of the foundation had felt that there had been a lot of music composed that was worthy of being heard and had never been recorded, and was of a nature that it just probably wasn't going to get performed very often. So he wanted to create a project that would go out and record some of these larger works, works for the synagogue, works for the concert hall, works for the theater stage, that had been composed over the course of over 350 years of Jewish life in the U.S. And it was initially supposed to be a much smaller project, 10 to 15 CDs, and over the course of a few years, it grew into a project that comprised more than 100 CDs. We began collecting the oral histories of people who had been involved in this musical world in various ways, as musicians, as actors, as clergy, and released about 50 CDs in the early part of the first decade of the 2000s, and then began to kind of shift into the online world. And I joined the archive. I had been at UCLA getting my doctorate in ethnomusicology, and they were looking for someone to kind of help them transition from physical music, from CDs and liner notes, to a website where much more material could be presented, where the material could be updated more frequently, and where we could just simply reach a much wider audience. So that was why I joined the archive in 2009. I had long had been advocating to create some kind of partnership with a university, so that this would enable us to do different kinds of work, to be able to go into the realms of presenting lectures and performances and developing curriculum. And that discussion sort of carried on for a number of years. And in 2017, I believe it was, we began our formal relationship with UCLA. Mark Kligman, who was supposed to be joining us this morning, and hopefully will at some point, he had been brought on in the departments of musicology and ethnomusicology to start a program in Jewish music. There was not really anybody who was teaching much in that realm at UCLA at the time. So we developed a relationship, and in 2020, that was formalized with a larger endowment from the foundation to build this program. And we had long been wanting to delve into the world of live performance a little bit, and we had been thinking about doing something with Dave Brubeck's Gates of Justice, because this is it's a massive work. It's something that a lot of people don't really get to experience in a live context. As I'm learning more and more this past week, it's very difficult work. So there are many challenges to actually being able to mount a public presentation. So we started talking about that, and then of course the world kind of turned upside down in March of 2020, and we sort of put those plans on hold for a bit. And again, unfortunately, in the interim, or between the time we first started speaking in 2016, 2017, our political world also kind of turned upside down. And then in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic and the murder of George Floyd and so many other people, the whole issue of social justice has just come to the forefront in a way that that it probably should have been for a long time, but just wasn't. So it's regrettably only become more relevant in the time there. But the work we're trying to do at UCLA is kind of covers three areas. We're doing teaching, right? We're working with students to learn about the history and culture of how music is played into the Jewish experience in America. We're doing some research projects, one of which is trying to kind of collect a comprehensive record of recorded Jewish music and create kind of the authoritative catalog of Jewish music that's been recorded in the U.S. And then the other area is in the realm of public performance and community engagement to put on concerts and lectures. And we're doing a lot more in the online world now, as everybody is as well. I think that covers kind of most of the work. Good morning.
Good morning, Jasmine Haley, ICUJP board member. Happy to be here. Thank you.
That's great. I don't know if Jeff, if you want to talk about the actual piece that we're talking about in the and the actual, maybe the other pieces on the program, and of course you guys are doing two performances, but the one that Holman is probably the one that most people here know where Holman is, and so if you want to talk about that as well.
Yeah, why don't I start with Gates? I know less. I can talk a little bit about some of the performances on the first part of the program. So give me just 1 second, please.
Just to keep everybody in the loop too, I'll put some links in the chat. One for the actual performance, and you can get tickets. I think tickets are still available. And for the performance on Tuesday at Holman, and let me see, and some other information, linking to Holman and the Milken archive. And as I understand it, the archive is going to be doing some more performances of different works that you can check out and see what's going on with their projects as well. So I'll do that for you guys.
I'd like to start by sharing just a short video. It's about 2 minutes long. And this is a video where Dave Brubeck and his wife, Iola, who collaborated with him to write the text or compile the text for this work, just talking very briefly about how the whole project came to be. So it's probably as good a place as any to start. So let's do that first. Sounding okay?
The whole idea of Gates came to us through Rabbi Charles Mintz of Rockdale and Temple in Cincinnati. They said, we think you can write a piece that will bring the Black and the Jewish culture back together. At this point in our history, there was a lot of friction in the communities.
A feeling of hostility where once they had worked together for civil rights and felt that they had a common understanding, a common cause, and that was being fragmented at that time. The message we knew we wanted to be basically the brotherhood of man. When we were searching for texts, we were looking for different ways to come at that. The major choral settings are from the Hebrew prayer book. We ran across these speeches of Martin Luther King, and one of them that was so powerful, there are knives and there are other arms, and you called upon all of us to put them away and bear instead the breastplate of righteousness. We thought, well, this says it so strongly in a language that is compatible with the Old Testament.
This world could disappear on us unless we really get down to believing in the original meaning of all the great religions and the brotherhood of man, and realizing that man is good.
And man is the instrument to bring about good. It is possible.
I think maybe we should also mention too that along with the music that Dave Brubeck wrote, his wife Iola Brubeck put together the lyrics to the cantata and took from different literary sources for that. So.
Yeah, the text is really comes from excerpts from the Hebrew prayer book, speeches that were given by Dr. King, excerpts from different Black and Jewish intellectuals. And the text is kind of a panoply, and it's the idea behind it was to sort of bring together something that was very ancient with something that was very modern, and kind of remind everybody of the importance of those old texts. So are you seeing the presentation okay? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So the album cover, this is the LP cover from the recording that was made in 1970, which really kind of captures the spirit of the times and the intention behind the work quite beautifully, I think. So I'll start by saying I didn't know anything about the Gates of Justice until I became involved with the Milken Archive. But like most people who know the name Dave Brubeck, I kind of knew Time Out, the famous 1959 album that made him somewhat famous. I didn't really know anything about his work or his aspirations in the realm of classical music. I didn't know anything about his studies with Darius Milhaud, who was the famous French Jewish composer who really became connected with Brubeck only because of the ugliness of history. Something we're talking about a little today. His family had been in the south of France for several centuries, and he had to leave France after Germany invaded. And of course, he only was able to leave and come to the U.S. because he was a very famous composer. The U.S. was not letting a lot of refugees into the country at the time. He wound up at Mills College near Oakland, California, where Dave Brubeck would ultimately go to study veterinary medicine. He would eventually give up veterinary medicine to study music because Dave Brubeck grew up on a ranch. So I owe a lot to the Milken Archive for kind of expanding my horizons about Dave Brubeck, but learning about this work has also expanded my horizons in other ways. Partially because I just found the story of its origin so compelling. Why did a religious Jewish organization commission this white person to compose a piece that would kind of communicate unity between the Black and Jewish communities at the end of the Civil Rights Movement? So you can just look at this text for a moment here. It comes from a song that was composed. It's a translation of a Yiddish song that was composed in 2020, and it's about the death of George Floyd. And I always found it kind of striking because we think of Yiddish song as something that is very old, but there's a very active community of Yiddishes who are involved with the Yiddish language and with Jewish music because of its history in the realm of social activism. So as we think about that, I'm just going to show a few pictures that kind of depict, various aspects of what life was like for immigrant Jews in the early part of the 20th century. These are young women protesting unfair labor practices. They were involved in the labor movement in the early part of the 20th century. These are pictures of folks who lived in tenements on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which was not something that was unique to Jews, but something that many immigrants experienced at the time. Very squalid, very poor living conditions. This is a photo of women who are working in the Triangle Shirtwaist factory. This was a sweatshop where people made clothing, and in March of 1911, I believe it was, that factory went up in flames, and about 165 young women, most immigrant Jews and Italians, died in that fire because the owners of the factory locked the doors because they didn't want people taking unauthorized breaks. And somehow a fire started, and there was all this clothing in there. There was lots of fuel there for the fire to burn. So yeah, over 160 people died in that fire. The photo on the right-hand side of the slide here is a song that was written in the aftermath of that to really highlight the tragedy and to call people's attention to it, and to sort of build one of the ways in which solidarity was built through the labor movement was through music and through singing songs together. So that's a Yiddish song. It's called the Fire Sacrifices, that was written in the aftermath of that. And at the time, the organization called the Workers' Circle. Now it's the tagline they use is Jewish culture for a just world. But in the early part of the 20th century, in fact, it was founded in 1900, I believe. It was a labor activism organization. So the things that hang on, I'm getting just a little bit ahead of myself. This is a song that this was their anthem, right? This was one of the ways that they sort of built solidarity within the realm of activism, was by singing together. So kind of sharing all of that because the pictures that I was sharing are showing various aspects of what life was like for immigrant Jews in the early part of the 20th century, where the focus of their social activism dealt with things that really directly affected their lives, right? They came here as immigrants, they were looking for freedom and opportunity, and they certainly found a lot of that. But they also found a lot of barriers to that. And so they advocated for better pay, for better working conditions. And these were issues that certainly affected them personally, but also benefited, other people. They didn't only benefit the Jewish community. So what happens, I think, is as Jews become more comfortable in the US over time, we see much of this impulse toward activism remains, but the focus kind of shifts. In some cases, to other communities, right? So in the middle of the 20th century, it began to shift toward racial equality, toward combating segregation, and many Jews became allied with Black communities in support of this struggle. And the two photos I'm showing here are Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. marching with Abraham Joshua Heschel, a very prominent rabbi and Jewish public intellectual from the 1960s. You can see it's getting cut out a little bit, but the man on the far right of that photo is carrying a Torah scroll as he's marching down the street. So the fact that he's carrying this very sacred text, with him as he's marching, just tells us how important that activism was to him. And then the individual on the right, I don't know if anybody recognizes who that is, but that was a rabbi named Joachim Prince. I got the captions up there.
I speak to you as an American Jew.
Sorry, I didn't want to play that quite yet. So Rabbi Joachim Prince had been a very prominent rabbi in Germany in the 1920s and 30s, was very vocal in trying to warn Jews about what was happening with the rise of the Nazi Party there and where that was going to lead. He was arrested many times. He was ultimately driven out of the country, came to the US in 1937, and became very active in the struggle for civil rights in the 1950s and 60s. And here in this photo here is the March on Washington, 1963. He spoke right after Mahalia Jackson sang and right before MLK gave his famous speech. So I thought I would play just a brief excerpt from what he said that day.
I speak to you as an American Jew. As Americans, we share the profound concern of millions of people about the shame and disgrace of inequality and injustice, which makes a mockery of the great American idea. As Jews, we bring to the great demonstrations in which thousands of us proudly participate a twofold experience, one of the spirit and one of our history. When I was the rabbi of the Jewish community in Berlin under the Hitler regime, I learned many things. The most important thing that I learned in my life, and under those tragic circumstances, is that bigotry and hatred are not the most urgent problems. The most urgent, the most disgraceful, the most shameful, and the most tragic problem is silence.
That was, MLK's speech that day has obviously become just such an iconic and important part of our history that a lot of people don't even know who Joachim Prince was. But I love that how he says that we bring to this spirit or to this struggle one of our spirit and one of our history, right? And it's really imploring people that to not remain silent, right? To really speak out about injustice and kind of make yourself part of the struggle. So that was 1963, and by the time Martin Luther King was assassinated in 1968, there was starting to be some friction between some of the Black and Jewish communities. In some ways physically, right? Jews were moving out of the inner cities and into the predominantly white suburbs. And then in some ways ideologically, where some of the activism was maybe shifting away from religious institutions and people becoming, less interested in this idea of the American melting pot, maybe more concerned with their own individual cultural heritage and identity. So I think this is the kind of backdrop within which a Jewish organization goes to Dave Brubeck and commissions a piece like this to really remind, the Jewish community that, yes, we have achieved a lot in this country, but we still need to remain committed to the struggles that are ongoing. So the organization that commissioned the Gates of Justice had already been working with Brubeck in an interfaith context. They had commissioned his first big religious work called Light in the Wilderness as part of the ecumenical council. So I think it was very natural for them to continue working with him, and they obviously found him to be a deeply spiritual individual. They understood that he had actually been throughout his life very committed to the cause of social justice, had been touring the American South in the 1950s, where he had an integrated band and would not play in venues that wouldn't host his integrated band. So he was turning down gigs where people would not allow an integrated band to play. So the work, The Gates of Justice, attempts to kind of bring these two communities together musically, but also in a kind of more universal way. So the idea was to take music from the Jewish tradition and music from American Black traditions and try to put them in the same work together to kind of help remind American Black and Jewish communities of their of the things that they had in common. So I thought what I would do if we have time is just play a couple excerpts from that work. So I'm going to play the second, or I'm sorry, I'm going to play the third and the fourth movement from the recording that was made in 1970. This is a year after, or just after the piece was composed and premiered in 1969. And I wanted to share this because you can kind of hear the interweaving of the Jewish cantorial voice and the Black spiritual voice. These are the two main musical traditions he was trying to kind of bring together, but you'll hear it in the backdrop of these the classical music that he's trying to put in there, the choral genres that he's bringing in that have a very of course a very sacred kind of sound, and also jazz. So he wasn't just kind of bringing these two traditions together, he was really trying to create a very kind of eclectic musical work. So let's listen to this. That was another photo. I guess I can leave this slide up as I share this here, because these are kind of the big overarching themes in the Gates of Justice. So this is from the 1970 recording. Is the sound coming okay? Just pause 1 second to point out he intended the voices to be one to be a Jewish cantor and the other to be a Black baritone, and we're hearing the Black baritone first, and then you'll hear the Jewish cantor come in a bit here. Their voices are quite different, so it should be pretty easy to distinguish. The other thing you can kind of hear in that movement, which is really just quite powerful, is Dave Brubeck's love for polyrhythms, right? He loved to kind of put himself kind of in a different meter than everything that was going on around him, or just kind of put his two hands in different meters. So you hear that a lot in that movement. And the other part I wanted to share with you comes just a little bit later in the work, and this recording I'm going to share comes from the recording that the Milken Archive did in the early 2000s. And this is kind of this is a modern day spiritual. This is Dave Brubeck taking an original text that was written by his wife and kind of composing it in a contemporary spiritual style. This is for the black baritone, who's just expressing a kind of a sense of loneliness, kind of trying to figure out how he fits into this world where he's surrounded by so much hate. And I will, I guess, just offer a trigger warning. There's one point in this movement where the chorus shouts some racial epithets. Not sure where that's coming from.
Just little children crying in a world of hate. Fire up and still we wait for love. gate.
I can stop it there for you. Just wanted to share this kind of the emotional peak of, or one of the emotional peaks of that piece of music. And we went out there on the, you heard the French horn play that one note. One of the things that Brubeck has integrated into the work is the sound of the shofar. And you hear that theme kind of constantly coming back. And this is really just meant to kind of like wake you up and remind you like, hey, pay attention now. This is important. So I hope I didn't take too long.
No.
I also was able to let Mark Kligman into the conversation here as well. So welcome home, Mark.
Thank you. Sorry I couldn't be here earlier. And I thank you all for being here and hope you're able to join us on Tuesday at Holman for this wonderful work.
Oh, it's good to have you here. What I was thinking, if it's okay with you, Carol Francis, is I thought maybe we can go from Jeff's presentation and go directly to Reverend Walden about some of the work that Holman's doing. And then Mark, if you had anything that you wanted to share about maybe the archive and ongoing projects and other parts of the Music for Justice program that you have ongoing, that would be great too. So
I think it might be good if Mark could speak to the first half of the program, because that was something you asked
yes.
about that I haven't gotten to yet, and he's in a much better position to do that than I am. So
right.
So maybe we can do that later.
Yeah, that'd be good. Reverend Walden, welcome. For those that don't know, he's pastor at Holman United Methodist Church in Los Angeles, and we've had a really good working relationship with Holman over the years with, of course, Reverend Jim Lawson and Louis Chase. I've talked to Reverend, I've talked to Jim Lawson before about, because I know his background was with sports and stuff before he, in fact, he went to India teaching sports to folks out there, and that's how he became involved with nonviolence. And he did a presentation at Holman years ago, and I said, when I heard that you were going back to Vanderbilt, I thought you were going to go as the basketball coach, because my bracket for the NC2As fell apart immediately, and I was hoping you'd fix it. So he didn't take my advice, but Reverend Walden, good to have you here, and please, if you have anything you'd like to share.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Rick. It's good to see everyone here this morning. Thank you so much for being here. I've enjoyed Jeff's presentation, and I'm sure I will enjoy Mark's as well. Rick, I thank you for the hospitality and the partnership that we have with our common values. Many of you know that Holman United Methodist Church is a historically Black church. And some of you may or may not know this, but not every Black church, but many Black churches across the country, particularly if we're talking about Black churches that are in urban areas. Many of the Black churches, not all, many of them, they have inherited their church buildings because of white flight. So when white flight took off, one of the things that white communities they left a lot of their white buildings, and some of those buildings were not in good shape. But anyway, the Black communities, they inherited them. One of the many points of pride at Holman is that Holman United Methodist Church built every single building that's on the campus. So they did not inherit any building from a white congregation. So the sanctuary was built by Holman United Methodist Church, a beautiful sanctuary. The beautiful education building was built by Holman United Methodist Church, and that beautiful administrative building was built by Holman United Methodist Church, a historically Black United Methodist Church, the largest Black United Methodist Church on the West Coast. And it is also one of the top 20 largest Black United Methodist churches in the United States of America. So, you know, I stand on the shoulders of Reverend James Lawson, our pastor emeritus, who's traveling. He's been speaking in North Carolina, and Reverend Lewis Chase is with Reverend Lawson. He traveled with him to North Carolina to keep an eye on him, make sure he stayed out of trouble. So hopefully they should be flying back either late tonight or tomorrow. And then Reverend Lawson served for a long time, over 20 years. But before Reverend Lawson, we had Reverend L.L. White, who served for the longest serving pastor, actually. And he really laid the foundation for Holman United Methodist Church as we know it. So one of the things, another point of pride that Holman United Methodist Church has, not only that they were able to build every single building that they have on the main church campus, but another point of pride is their music tradition. That Holman United Methodist Church has made it a point to celebrate and preserve music out of the Black experience. Now, in 2023, that is very noble, and you do that with great intentionality, because a lot of churches, Black churches included, they are heavily influenced by contemporary Christian music. And contemporary Christian music is fine, but Holman has decided to really celebrate and preserve music out of the Black tradition. So one of the things that I put in the link, and I'll just show it. I think I have sharing. Rick, I can share a little bit.
Yes.
Okay. Now all of you see this flyer about okay. So one of the things that Holman has done, they've made it a point to celebrate the Negro spirituals. And I would say that is not done at every church, and that is not done at every Black church. But Holman feels that not only is it important, well, it's important for a number of reasons, because they feel that the power of music, it sends a lesson, it sends a message. So music is not only music for rhythm purposes, but music sends valuable lessons in terms of where we've been, where we are, and the possibilities of where we can go to. And I think Dave Brubeck really had that in terms of where we've been as a people, where we are, and also where we can go to. Now, of course, Dave's music sounded pleasant to our ears. Many of us were kind of bopping back and forth and things of that nature. But we also know that there are profound lessons in the music. So this Sunday, we're at Holman United Methodist Church. We're having our 61st Negro Spirituals concert at 3 p.m. Please, all of you are invited, and please spread the word. I was told back in the day that the Negro Spiritual Concert was so popular and large that they had to extend it for 2 days. For many years, it was for 2 days. because the crowd was so large. And I was told that it was so large, people would be sitting outside of the sanctuary. And our sanctuary is fairly large. But even in 2023, Holman has decided that music, the power of music is one to be celebrated and preserved. And I'm happy to say that at Holman United Methodist Church, we are fully aware that we do not have a monopoly of the power of music, and music has not only played a significant role within the Black experience in terms of freedom and highlighting values, but music also transcends race, and it also transcends religion. And it's also not only powerful for the Black experience, but for other experiences as well. So I am happy. Let me try to, can I do this? Come down. I am happy to announce the growing partnership that we have with UCLA School of Music, particularly in the person of Dr. Mark Kligman, that the Gates of Justice will be performed at Holman United Methodist Church on Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. So one of the things that, as many of you know, I think as Jeff was highlighting Dr. King in his presentation, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he was an interfaith person to his core, that he was influenced by India, one of India leaders, Gandhi, who was Hindu. And really, King embraced that. And if you go to the King Center in Atlanta, you will see a big statue of Gandhi, a larger than life-size statue of Gandhi. And of course, through King's life, he continued to partner with the Jewish community. And I should say that at Holman United Methodist Church, we have several events with the Jewish community because we recognize, and I met Mark for the first time at Holman at an interfaith event not long ago that we had with the Jewish community. I think that I cannot under or overestimate the similarities in the struggle for freedom that Black people have with the Jewish community within not only this country or the United States of America, but all over the globe. There are just striking similarities. And I'm glad that we can find a lot of common ground, and music is very, very powerful. Many of you know that during the civil rights movement, when people were marching in the midst of danger, adversary, and a lot of opponents, they often sang songs. They had music. Some of you know that even during wartime, every military branch, every branch of the military in the United States, they have a band. The Marine Corps have a band. The Air Force has a band. The Navy has a band. The Army has a band, because even the United States military realized how powerful music is to our spirits in the face of adversity. So we as people of faith, I'm glad, and we as just people, period, I'm glad that during this gathering, we realize the power of music and how it can elevate us and help renew us and help transcend us to higher levels of consciousness and freedom. I should say that lastly, before we transition, Holman United Methodist Church, one of our initiatives, we are not only celebrating music and preserving music, but we are also helping to transfer music to the younger generations. And we're doing this in a variety of strategic ways and using a variety of initiatives. Many of you know Charles Dickerson. He helped to create the Inner City Orchestra. Charles Dickerson used to work at Holman for around 15, 20 years, around 10 years ago. But after he left Holman to go to do other things, he maintained a relationship with Holman. And I want to show you all this video. It's a very good video about how the power of music can help to help children and help young people on their very increasingly difficult journeys. It's only a few minutes long. Let's see. Do you see the video? Okay, great. I'll press play. Well, and I should say the sanctuary that you see, that's Holman United Methodist Church, for those of you who may not know. This is Holman United Methodist Church, where I'm privileged to serve.
Every year, the celebration of Martin Luther King Day is very special for Holman United Methodist Church in South Los Angeles. Dr. King preached here in the month prior to his assassination in 1968. This year, at the church, the Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles is performing choral and orchestral setting of King's famous speech, I Have a Dream, and premiering a setting of Amanda Gorman's poem, The Hill We Climb.
Personally, it resonates because, as her words say, I am also a Black girl that has descended from slaves, and it just marks or just paints a picture of how far we've come as a people and as a nation.
Charles Dickerson is the author of both settings. A professional conductor for over 40 years, he remembers how in the summer of 2009, young musicians from the South Los Angeles, known for its primarily African-American population, approached him, asking to create a youth orchestra.
There are youth orchestras all over the United States. Most of them are in suburbs. Most of them are in outlying areas, not in inner city areas. They're in areas where there is great wealth. They're in areas that are very Anglo. They're in areas that are not diverse, hardly in any possible way. They are really pretty much in areas that are somewhat affluent. There aren't youth orchestras in the middle of the ghetto, and that's where these young people live. And they can play. They can play just as well, if not better.
From 9 members 13 years ago, the Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles grew to 75 today. Being a nonprofit, the orchestra doesn't charge the players and can even provide them with instruments. They take musicians as young as 10 years old, but the core of the troupe is middle and high schoolers. In their portfolio, there are already a great number of high-profile performances.
I was playing for Michelle Obama. I was playing on the National Mall. I was playing at the Hollywood Bowl for the NFL. Like, so many amazing different things. I've met so many different people, important people, and I've gained so much performing experience.
Despite being the largest majority Black orchestra in the United States, the troupe welcomes musicians of other ethnicities too.
This group has helped me develop into the man that I am. It has helped me become who I am and discover that I want to continue being a classical musician. The beautiful thing about this orchestra is that it is proof that no matter what your color of skin is, that you have an opportunity in classical music, whether you're brown, African American, and any color type, you are welcome.
Dickerson's vision for the future involves creating similar orchestras in every city in the U.S. with a substantial number of young Black people. Currently, he is developing the Southside Chicago Youth Orchestra. Janeczko for VOA News, Los Angeles.
Okay, you know, just to piggyback on Jeff's highlight in terms of Dave Brubeck, Dave refused to play for a city or for a venue who would not allow him to bring, people of other ethnicities, people of color. So, I'm just glad that in 2023, we find people like Dr. Mark Kligman and other Charles Dickersons of the world and other people bringing different ethnicities, nationalities, races, religions together on common ground through the power of music. That concludes my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Walden. I don't know if this is apocryphal, meaning maybe it's not true, maybe it's not, but Eugene Wright was the bass player on Take 5 and a few different records that Mr. Brubeck did. And, some venues said, well, can you get another bass player because Eugene Wright's a black man, we can't, And he said, apparently he said, we'll substitute a white bass player for you, but I can't play that night. So we're going to send Oscar Peterson for me. And I think he said something like Max Roach on drums and stuff. So I thought that was a really nice comment. I don't know if it's true or not.
I have not heard that. Sounds plausible.
Yeah. Mr. I know Mark Kligman joined us after having the issue that a lot of Southern Californians deal with on a regular basis with their car, and I had to deal with that last week. So I don't know if you want to take a couple of minutes, just like maybe 5 minutes or so before we go into questions and about the program and the various things that are happening with your organization. Just to introduce, he's the inaugural holder of the Mickey Katz Endowed Chair in Jewish Music at the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music. And he's a professor of, again, what I wanted to major in, ethnomusicology and musicology. And he's a director of the Lowell Milken Center for Music of American Jewish Experience at UCLA. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rick. It's really nice to be here, and my big thanks to Reverend Walden, who made the connection for us to be able to present about our wonderful upcoming program. And we really value the partnership we have with Reverend Walden and Holman United Methodist Church. It's very important for us at UCLA to bring the things we do into the community. I'm Jewish, of course, and we do that with a lot of synagogues in LA. And it's very important that we expand the work that we do and what we're doing through our work with the Jewish community and really have this cultural and interfaith dialogue. It's just a very important thing. And sadly, the way the world is today, these dialogues are more important than ever. So we're very grateful to be here and a part of this forum. And my thanks to my real friend and colleague, Dr. Jeff Janeczko, for stepping in and improvising and being more a part of the program today than you may have intended this morning. So what I'd like to do is just share with you the first half of the program, which Jeff had mentioned. So let me just share that with you. And I'll tell you a little more about the center. So this is our program, which I hope you can all see. And I just wanted to walk you through it. The conception of the program as a whole is that where the Brubeck piece is a very important, profound piece of the past, written in 1969, we wanted to bring the conversation of music and justice into the present. So what we did was we formed a program that is full of living composers who are making statements about music and justice. One of the two choirs that we have for our performance for Gates of Justice, one is Tonality, a community-based choir, which I'll tell you a little more about in a second, and the other is the Chamber Singers at UCLA. Tonality is our choir for the first half, led by Alexandra Blake. He's an African-American man who's a graduate of our UCLA choral conducting program. And he formed the choir with other classmates, with other people in LA. And the whole goal is to give opportunities to underrepresented minorities. So they make up half of our choir for this performance, again, along with the students at UCLA. So the first half, the opening work is called America Will Be, music by Joel Thompson. Joel Thompson is a young composer, and this is a text by Langston Hughes, very beautiful choral work. The second work is going to be Psalm 133 by Nick Strimple, and Nick Strimple was head of the sacred music program at USC, where he's been for many, many years. The next is a work called I Dream a World, which is written by our colleague at UCLA, professor of jazz Arturo O'Farrill, really well-known figure in the Latin jazz world, just recently won his 8th Grammy. He's taking the text I Dream a World by Langston Hughes and is setting it for jazz trio and string quartet and eclectically mixing different musical styles. The soloist will be India Carney, who was also a graduate of UCLA's vocal program, and she went on to, I think it was the 5th season of The Voice, and she was a finalist, so she has a wonderful blooming career. The next work is by a friend of mine. His name is Gerald Cohen. He's a cantor and a composer in New York, and he based this text on an essay of Abraham Joshua Heschel with phrases from Psalm 35 called I Felt My Legs Were Praying. And this is an essay that Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote after he marched over the Selma Bridge with Dr. Martin Luther King. So Abraham Joshua Heschel was so moved, and as probably everyone in this group knows, Abraham Joshua Heschel is a very important figure in the Jewish community as leading by example and sharing within his teachings of the Bible, within his essays, within his work at all levels, how important it is to engage in the work of justice. The next work, Dear Freedom Writers, will be a world premiere work, which is written by our director of our African American Music Ensemble at UCLA, Diane White Clayton. And Diane White Clayton had our UCLA students learn about the Freedom Writers and actually write letters to Freedom Writers. And she actually had some Freedom Writers that she introduced the students to. And this is the basis of her work. And I'm pleased to say that in my conversations with Reverend Walden, that there's a member of Holman United Methodist Church named Peggy Preachley, who has a very fascinating family history. And part of her story of her life is that she was a freedom writer. So we invited her to come and be a part of the program on Tuesday, and she'll read one of her poems that she wrote in the early 1960s prior to the performance of Dear Freedom Writer. And lastly, the last work is called Democracy by Jared Jenkins, another young African-American composer. So the spirit of what we've tried to do with this, or trying to do with our program of Music and Justice, is really to bring together Jewish and African-American musicians, to bring their creativity together, and to really bring a program where we can reflect and we hope inspire and be moved to really engage in the profundity of the issues of music and justice, and as Reverend Walden said, to be uplifted and to be moved into a direction of intentionality to continue to engage in that work. So I don't know if I have any time left to really share anything else with you, but the other things just to say to you is that we're a very active center. We're a new center at UCLA. This performance of Gates of Justice, this whole concert, is our inaugural performance. We formed in December of 2020 during the pandemic. So this is the first opportunity that we have to do a large-scale production. And on Monday at UCLA, we have a conference on the topic of music and justice that Dr. Janeczko and I have curated to bring together scholars and journalists and activists to really have a very important and nuanced conversation about music and justice. So again, thank you for the opportunity, and we hope we see you Tuesday at Holman.
Thank you. I am so thrilled at today's presentation because it's the intersection of so much that ICUJP has worked on for over 21 years. Jim Lawson, along with George Regas of All Saints Church in Pasadena, and Dr. Mayer Hathout of the Muslim Public Affairs Council were all founders of ICUJP. And we stand on their shoulders in doing programs like this, as well as conferences and social action in the streets and elsewhere. I wanted everyone to know among our guests that we support, and I'm very active in the Black Jewish Justice Alliance, which Pastor Q, Aryeh Cohen, Pastor William Smart of SCLC is active in. So fortunately in Los Angeles, there is a vibrant Black Jewish community standing shoulder to shoulder, continuing the work of Heschel and King. In fact, our annual program that Jim Lawson and Rabbi Sharon Brous and others have spoken at is the Heschel King Forum. So we believe in praying with our feet because we've marched in that spirit and we've continued that tradition. And this is such a thrill to see major institutions like the Milken Archive and UCLA and Holman coming together. And we're hopeful this is the first of many collaborations of this kind, because that sanctuary is such a gorgeous facility for listening to music, prayer, and activism. My question is only to ask whether this event on March 1st will be recorded. Will it be made available for any of us who are unable to attend in person?
So what, I hope I'm unmuted. Yeah, okay. So we are going to record the event, and we're not exactly sure that we will be able to broadcast it. And that just deals with broadcasting rights, which is a very complicated issue for rights of music and for how performers and soloists are contracted. We didn't contract for broadcast, we contracted for a performance. The one opportunity that we have, and I'll put the link in shortly, is that we're doing this work in a performance on Sunday at UCLA, and that will be Sunday at 4 o'clock, and that will be live streamed. So the hope is that people around the country will be able to live stream. We hope that people locally come. So we really hope people will come to Holman. But if that's not possible, I'll post the link, and we invite you to be a part of this in the way that you can through the live stream. So I'll post that.
Sounds good. Carol Francis? There you go.
Thank you. Really exciting, using music as a vehicle to achieve justice is really important. And I just want to say America will be, or Let America Be America Again. The poem by Langston Hughes is my favorite poem of all poems. And Jim Lawson looks so good in that clip, and he's in his he's in his 90s, and he looks so vibrant. Anyway, my question has to deal with how far can we go with music and justice? It was mentioned today that that King was an interfaithist. He not only worked with Jews like Herschel, but he also was very close to Mahatma Gandhi, who was a Hindu. But the one group that's being left out here is the Muslims. So I'm wondering if the Jewish groups working with Jews for Jewish music for justice will do something around Palestine. I know David Brubeck is an amazing songwriter, Jewish songwriter who writes some of his most beautiful music for Palestine. There were several groups that got together, Jewish klezmer music for Against the Wall. And it's a whole CD of music of different klezmer groups playing in solidarity with Palestine. So I'm wondering if that's ever been considered, because you speak of the world today and what we really, really need, music and justice. But one of the things we really need it around is Palestine.
Certainly, peace in Palestine is something that I pray for every day. I mean, it's something that is so important and vital and significant for the world. There have been a number of very fascinating groups that developed during the Oslo Accords in the 1990s. They're not all active today. One is called Bustan Abraham, which is taking, Abraham, the biblical figure, as a commonality between Palestinian Christians and Jews. And there's another group in Israel that's called Ale Zayit, and that's the Hebrew word for the olive branch that the dove in the Noah story brought back for proof that there was vegetation. And Ale Zayit was formed and really even promoted by the American State Department during the Oslo Accords to really develop conversations of peace, along with poets and other artists. I'm not aware that those particular activities are really still developing on, kind of a national level, but there are many individuals who are involved in these activities. And we've done some programs like that at UCLA based on students who are from the Middle East, who are really trying to build bridges. One of the areas that I study is Middle Eastern Jewish liturgical music. And the large number of Jews in the United States, about 80%, have their heritage from Eastern Europe. But that other 20%, that is a growing number, and which is a much larger percentage of the population in Israel and among Jewry around the world, does have a presence in LA. There are probably 50 Middle Eastern Jewish congregations of different sizes in Los Angeles. And I think it would be a wonderful opportunity to explore that. What I find in my work with those communities is they tend to be highly insular, and doing shared programs is a challenge. And I think there's just a lot of relationship building, and knowing that there's interest in it is very important. And I do think that there's tremendous opportunity there.
I agree. I agree with Mark. I think there's tremendous opportunity. I think that if we're using Martin Luther King Jr. as an example, I mean, he definitely had dialogue with Malcolm X, and he respected Malcolm X, although they're known for utilizing two different methods toward freedom. But I think their differences never was, I would say their difference that kept them apart had little to do with their faith. And I think they respected one another's faith. And then also too, there's a growing number of documentation about Martin Luther King Jr.'s conversation, not only with Malcolm X, but also with Muhammad Ali, and even with other Muslims. So I think one of the things that we have to do more of is, I don't know if you all saw this, but when I showed the video of the inner city, there were a few younger Muslim students playing instruments. And one of the things that Holman, we are increasingly is looking for common ground. And like Mark, I pray for Palestine often and have friends from that geographical area. So I think historically speaking, it's undeniable about the Black and Jewish and other partnerships. And I think that, you know, there's definitely the largest room in anybody's house or in anybody's life. Remember this, the largest room in our house, in the largest room in our lives, it's the room for improvement. So, so that is definitely a room for improvement. I'll stop there.
I just wanted to add the name of the project is now escaping me. I believe it's called the East-West Divide Orchestra, which was a project created by the composer Daniel Barenboim, or I'm sorry, the conductor Daniel Barenboim, and the late prominent Palestinian intellectual and advocate Edward Said, who kind of came to know one another through music, and then had this idea to you know, what Reverend Walden was talking about earlier with the project at Holman and the youth orchestra, was to bring together young musicians from these two different backgrounds and to just play music together. And they would take them on tours in Europe and things like that. And I mean, Edward Said has been passed for many years now. I'm not sure what the status of that project is, but it was quite active, I think, in the probably around the time of the Second Intifada was when it was really quite active.
Yeah, and also in Israel, David Broza, who's a prominent, you know, pop artist there, has been doing a lot of work in a cross-cultural context with the Muslim community there too. So.
Can I just add one thing? Yeah, the David Broza is doing that around the world in very, very powerful ways. There's also another younger group than the Daniel Barenboim activity called the Polyphony. And Polyphony is a group, I just put the link in the chat, which is based in Nazareth in Israel. And they're actively trying to work educationally with getting Palestinian and Israelis who are living in the same area. And many of these people who live in the same area just don't have any form of dialogue with each other. And they're using music as a form of dialogue. So this is one active group today called Polyphony.
That's great. Oh, Phil, you had your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to share, so I had a personal memory that came up from this presentation. In 1960, I was working in the Black community in Berkeley, and one of my co-workers simultaneously introduced me to the work of Dave Brubeck and the work of CORE, Desegregating Berkeley. And it was a defining moment for me.
Yeah, that would be. I think I think we're coming down to the hourglass is kind of getting light at the top. So, Carol Francis.
Yeah, I just want to say I put the website for Klezmer Musicians Against the Wall, which came out after the wall was built through Palestinian land by Israel. And So, and also there's this really great Palestinian oud player living in LA. Last I heard, I hope he's still in LA. So if you are interested in doing something with him, he's really good. He's written for the IMAX Theater, the Arabia. He was one of the two composers for the Arabia soundtrack at IMAX. Anyway, so announcements about non-affiliate.
I think there was
Yes.
Steve had that had his hand up, and Jasmine as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Might
did
be
not
another
notice that.
question, Ricky,
Steve.
real quick.
Steve and then Jasmine.
Well, I'm fearful my suggestion is passing away, because for our closing circle, I was going to have you ask Reverend Walden if he could give a closing prayer. But I think, has he left? Oh, no, there he is. Great. Reverend Walden, after these final announcements, we have a closing circle where we lift up people in need, but then we finish our event with someone giving a closing prayer. And the fortuity of you being with us affords us the chance for you to do that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And someone else had
Jasmine?
Jasmine.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I have seen the inner city arts, and they are absolutely amazing, remarkable, diverse, and stunning. I remember I was blown away. It was completely free, and it was at the Getty Center, and it was so amazing. They were very professional and very, very bright, and it was so uplifting to see a group of diverse professional players in an orchestra. It was just a very good performance, and I really it's really good to know the backstory, to the performances too. I remember I was just like in awe the whole time. It was just really good. So thank you for that.
I did want to say thank you to everybody that was able to present today. And I hope this is part of an ongoing conversation that we have and can help disseminate. Please keep in touch. And of course, I should say this coming Saturday morning, speaking of Holman, Reverend Lawson is having his nonviolence Zoom call. So if you can join that as well, and please join the performance at Holman on Tuesday if you can, and if you can, check it out this weekend too. Thank
you. Ruby, did I see your hand up?
Yes. Oh, yes. I was just kind of blown away with this, because I remember Take 5, and I remember love Dave Brubeck, and all of the things that were expressed and everything, and the unity between the two. And I remember going as a child to the Methodist Church Holman, because I lived over there off of Adams, and my mother was Muslim, but I liked Holman. And so I'm just thankful for all of the things that you expressed this day, for the history and for everything. And I'm just grateful for this work and for its continued success and progress and growth, and the unity of the children and the music, coming together. I'm just grateful. Thank you. Anyway, my name is Ruby, Reverend Ruby, and I'm with the board here. I'm a metaphysical minister, and I'm also with the Agape International Spiritual Center and with the City of Spiritual Living. So here we go. Thank you again for the work.
Anthony.
Yeah, I just want to join the chorus and say this has been one of the most inspiring, uplifting presentations. I want to thank Rick and all of you who shared today. I was particularly touched to see Charles Dickerson, because when my wife, Kathleen, who was a Methodist pastor, passed away, she had a beautiful silver flute. We wondered what to do with it, so we donated it to the Inner City Orchestra. So I had a chance to hang out a little bit with Charles Dickerson and also see the performance. So it really touches my heart this morning to see how music is being used as it should be to lift the human spirit, bring us all together, and to hold up justice and peace. It's just wonderful. So thank you all. But I also want to say this, my heart is heavy this morning with all this horrible weather. I think of my unhoused neighbors who are on the streets. So when we have a time of prayer, Pastor, please hold them, as I know you do, in our prayers.
All right. Are there people that you want to lift them?
I would like to lift up all of those that were with the bishop who was just killed. And for the church, the families, for just everyone, for all of the ministers, practitioners, priests, everyone, for their safety, security, and just for peace power, or a thought before the actions. It's like that action that happened with that gentleman coming and shooting that bishop. So I just like to lift up this whole nation for peace action. I'd like to lift up Vita too right now, because just supporting her at this time, as she has released her sister, and just for her love right now.
Today is the 1-year anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine. I know there are some political differences across the political spectrum on this war, but there can be no difference in our sadness for the deaths and casualties in that war, and all of the civilians, the innocent, and even those in military service who have died in this war on both sides. It is tragic. Militarism was one of the things, along with racism and materialism, that Dr. King most condemned. We still have it with us. We have not gotten past our warlike instincts. It's tragic, and the loss of human life is what makes it so particularly tragic.
Hard to believe it's been a year. I want to lift up Paula. Those of you who were around the circle at Emmanuel during the years that she came, she is still my best friend, even though Alzheimer's been taking her mind away. And she's now in hospice and may not be alive in a few days or in a few weeks.
I'd like to lift up the people of Turkey, the whole country, this rescues, everybody. This everybody needs lifting up prayer, safety, and healing.
Reverend?
Okay. Eternal God, God of all nations, God of all religions, God of all peoples, God of all humanity, God of all creation. We pause to acknowledge your power and your presence in our lives and in the world. And Lord, as we pause to acknowledge your power and presence, we ask you to continue to redeem us, continue to restore us, continue to guide us and protect us. Be with each and every person here represented. Be with us individually and be with us collectively. We not also think of ourselves, but we also think of the unhoused. We ask you to provide some shelter. We ask you to provide some comfort during this season of their lives. Lord, we also ask you to be with different geographical areas, not only with the United States of America, but be with other countries. We ask you to increase your peace that goes beyond all understanding and be with those people who have experienced deaths, devastating deaths. Our hearts break for the LA bishop who was tragically taken away from us. Allow his spirit and soul to rest in peace and allow others to rest in peace who have been murdered under untimely, unjustified, unknown circumstances. We ask you to be with Ukraine and Russia and Turkey and other countries, Israel and also Palestine. Lord, we need you. Allow us to receive your love, grace, and mercy, and allow us to reflect your love, your grace, and your mercy. Everyone that's on this Zoom, be with us in ways in which we cannot be with ourselves. We thank you for the community partners, the educational partners, the institutional partners who have invested and who have become determined to build more bridges rather than walls. So Lord, allow us to build bridges of cooperation, of communication, in love. Lord, God of all people, God of all religions, God of all creation, we ask you these things humbly, and we ask you these things with the utmost respect. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. As chair, I wanted to thank everyone today. This has been an extraordinary program. Thanks to Carol Francis and Rick for facilitating and organizing. I wish you all well. Our board of directors will be meeting in this space in 5 minutes. Everyone who's not on the board, please go well and be safe. And our new guests and presenters today are now card-carrying members of ICUJP. Please join us in our programs and in our activities throughout the year. Thank you, everybody. Be well and be safe.